And I'm really looking forward to this particular opportunity within our division of integrated academic and behavior systems. We really spend time thinking about the breadth of the stakeholders that impact all of our school systems. And what we know is that the work that's done within our institutes of higher ed is absolutely imperative to what happens within the classroom. And so what's exciting about this opportunity is to just begin the conversation of collaboration, knowing that afterwards we'll be sending a survey out to find out what it is that you need from us, so that way we can continue to do this collaborative work. I definitely encourage you as much as possible to, we welcome all different types of questions in ways that we can be of assistance to you, and also learn from you as to the work that's happening within each of the institutions. So I thank you so much for spending time on this webinar or listening to it as well. And if there's anything that we can do, we look forward to that opportunity and also learning from you. And looking forward to seeing the results from the survey to see how we can continue to collaborate and work together for all of our students who are teaching our students basically at this point. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. We appreciate you stepping out of another meeting to join us. I know you can't stay with us, but we appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thanks for the opportunity, Lynn. You guys have a good afternoon.
Thank you. So we want to get feedback from our participants, and while we have a small group, we are recording this and we will be sharing this with the field. And one of the things, as we share with you the work that we're doing in our division, we really want to get some information from those of you that are here live on the call to help educate our team about what you see as most valuable for teachers to learn during their teacher prep program. When we're thinking about, like Amy said, our stakeholders, we really want to think about obviously the universities and the programs that you have for our teachers, but we want to think about really getting this to our teachers and what they need. And so thank you for sharing your insights by responding to this poll everywhere here. You can see that you can just text that number to join, and then that you see on the screen with Carmen Mills, one of our consultants' names, and then just text us your message and it should appear right there. So we're going to give you a minute or two to be able to join that and give us some response. So I can see that we have a couple folks from Shaw University, Kimberly Bryant, and then Dr. Lucy Wilson. And I can see that we've got on the screen here critical MTSS components. Those are the just a prompt for you and thinking about what our teachers need to learn. And feel free to add to this as we go through the presentation. That would be a great way for us to continue to learn from you. So if you haven't had a chance to respond to the poll everywhere, you certainly can do that during the presentation. We want to move ahead to setting some historical context up, and I'm sure that some of the things that you would respond to in terms of what's important for teacher prep, we would imagine that those topics would also come up, whether it be through our historical context or through some of our critical components. And in thinking about our historical context, we feel like it's really important for us to share and allow you to make connections about kind of where the work of multi-tiered systems of support has evolved from. And hopefully there will be some very familiar language to you. So we're going to show you kind of our a timeline of this work over the last about 14 years and how North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has been engaged in this. I'm going to give you a few minutes just to familiarize yourself with the graphic here and to take a look at these 5 big milestones over the last 14 years. So some of the words that that stand out to me in terms of my history with the work really go back to that 2004 when we're looking at RTI, implementation science. Even RTI, of course, has had changes over the last 14 years and what that acronym stood for, whether it be for responsiveness to instruction, response to intervention, response to instruction. That is still part of the framework, and we're going to talk more about how that's integrated. But that is how the work started, really in the state supporting both RTI through what looked like then about an 8-day training for school districts to attend face-to-face. And also at the time was the PBIS state initiative that was taking place. And for about 8 years, we continued with that model. It wasn't until more recently in 2013 that North Carolina Department of Public Instruction moved to a more integrated model, looking at multi-tiered system of support for both academics and behavior. And so in 2013, Dr. Jablonski, whom you just heard provide the welcome, she was there as a single consultant in North Carolina for the work of MTSS. And she was able to hire 4 state consultants because the state board and state superintendent and other division directors recognized the importance of this work. And so at that time, 4 state consultants were hired and began doing the work of building common language across the state, began building 4 work groups around research and evaluation, around communication and visibility, started considering the work of the work group of coaching and technical assistance and what that could look like. And of course, in educating the educators across North Carolina, looking at professional development. So for about a year there, we functioned as a team of 4 state consultants with the leadership from Dr. Jablonski. And then in 2015, North Carolina added an additional 4 consultants that would be serving the region, so that we were not serving 2 regions each, but that we began serving a single region in addition to building the work through those 4 work groups that I've mentioned. And so Dr. Jablonski and 8 consultants began to lead that work, and the work started rolling out into the districts in a more strategic way through cohorts. So it was during that time that we began to look at readiness and allow districts to consider their readiness for this integrated system. They started joining the first 2 cohorts at that time, and that was a rolling in of cohorts 1, who began the original work, and then 4 or 5 months later, we added a second group of cohorts representing all 8 regions in the state. And it was at that time that we started the statewide professional development that we had strategically planned. So for about a year, we worked with that model, knowing that we still had a large portion of our districts and charter schools that had not begun the work. And so in 2016, we added a 3rd cohort of school districts and charter schools. And additionally, we added a fourth cohort of districts and charter schools that continued their readiness work by beginning the common language work with our initial modules and started attending some face-to-face training as well as some online training that we had developed. And then most recently, just last year, was when true integration really occurred, and we really celebrate this, that we had the integration of the PBIS consultants who were originally housed in the Exceptional Children Division of DPI, who then joined the IABS division, the Division of Integrated Academic Behavior Systems. And that is where we are now. We have integrated those additional consultants so that they are no longer housed in the Exceptional Children Division, but they are housed in our division. And we've really integrated the work so that we're not just single consultants working on academics or behavior, but each of the 8 regional consultants that you'll see on our map towards the end of the presentation are working collaboratively on both academics, behavior, and socially and emotional supports for students. I'm going to pause here and respond to a question in the chat. So thank you for the question about when is it expected that the MTSS framework is fully implemented by all North Carolina schools? So that is a terrific question. We are really proud to say that all of our traditional school districts are now engaged in cohorts 1 through 4. We also have over 140 charter schools that are engaged in cohorts 1 through 5 right now. And that's what you'll notice that I didn't mention, but Kimberly, we have cohort 5 down there on the green icon. So that is when we started our additional cohort that picked up the charter schools that were not engaged in cohorts 1 through 4. We still have a number of our charter schools that have not joined a cohort, and we are still working strategically to reach out to them to get them engaged in our strategic plan for professional development and coaching. We've got other consultants on the call that are specifically part of that work. So Rhonda or Carmen, if you'd like to add to that, feel free.
Lynn, I think that you summarized that fantastically. So
okay.
Thank you.
So please, okay, so please continue to ask questions though. We're monitoring the chat. We're happy to pause and take time for some processing. So as we think about the work that's happened over the last 14 years, what's really exciting to our team is that our team is grounded in particular beliefs that we are then sharing with the district so that we can help support them address their core beliefs. And so we're going to be sharing some slides with you, and the next 4 or 5 slides are just going to talk about those basic ideas that this work is grounded in, and hopefully this will kind of allow you to see that the work has shifted from work just around students that are needing additional supports to looking at all of our students. And so we put these concepts before the districts and we ask them to identify what their core beliefs are. North Carolina MTSS core beliefs are reflected in our structures. And so you see that we're a division of district and regional support of DPI. The other thing that we really put before our district teams is that this work starts with the only and best prevention of strong core support. And when we're talking about core support, we'll unpack that a little bit later, but we're talking about the first work that is happening in the classrooms for all students, what everybody is getting every day. Another belief that our work is grounded in is the idea that students can catch up. We believe that we can close the achievement gap. And the final belief that our work rests in is the idea that we focus on the whole child. And we do that by problem solving around behavior, academics, and socially emotional supports for students. And the other shift that's happened with this work is that we're using a team approach versus one teacher or one staff member having to figure this out themselves. We are working to ensure that every school in North Carolina has strong teaming structures that support students for both behavior and academics. So if we were to pause here, really to summarize what this work is about of MTSS, it's really about assisting schools and districts with total school improvement. The question is often asked of our districts, does your system that you have set up make sense for your teachers and for your students? So while we are working to improve outcomes for students, rather than focusing solely on just classroom instruction, we're actually taking a step back to examine how are our policies, procedures, and practices all working together to get strong outcomes. The next slide really displays kind of how we are looking at this as a big picture, and so we call these our 6 critical components, and these are the areas that we help districts with assessment of and support to allow them to improve. And so I'm going to run through these, starting with the green box over there of leadership and shared responsibility, and just make sure that we're providing common language around what these really are focused on. So the idea of leadership focuses on not only the principal at the school level, but it focuses on the leadership team. It focuses on a strategic plan that also includes family engagement and professional development that supports that idea of continuous improvement. If we move down to the building and building the capacity and infrastructure for implementation, our team wants to point out that this really focuses on understanding of the work within the school, that the school educators understand that this is about the data systems, that we allow the leadership team to support the school by making connections about school improvement. This includes the idea of how we coach our staff at the school. And the other thing that this allows is that we can look at the schedule and make decisions about the schedule so that we can support teachers with professional development, so that we can support them to have PLC time to collaborate with their colleagues. If we continue around the bottom of this graphic and look at communication and collaboration, that's a really, obviously clearly is talking about communication, but we want you to understand that we're talking about both internal communication within the school building, as well as those external communication loops that help to get the supports that are needed from the district teams. It also ensures that our teachers have time to examine data, that the stakeholders have the time and opportunities to examine data and to build understanding about the school improvement. The other piece of the communication and collaboration is family engagement. And one of the things that we're encouraging schools to do is to not just settle for looking at engagement of those families that are easy to access, but to how to problem solve around engaging our families that are less responsive or need additional supports. If we look at data-based problem solving, I'm going to move up there. We want to be sure that our schools have data to access all tiers. So the idea here is that we don't want to just ask, is the intervention working like we might have 14 years ago? But what we really want to focus on now is that our core instruction, that it is effective and that it's working. We also want to have systems in place through the data evaluation system and the database problem solving that allow us to have data around academics, around behavior, things like office discipline referrals, engagement, looking at attendance, and looking at our data around social emotional support so that we can really make the shift to looking at the whole child. And lastly, if we go up here to the idea of 3-tiered instructional intervention model, clearly we're looking at the instruction and the intervention that's happening in the entire school environment. And when we think about the work of MTSS, the other thing that's really critical for university stakeholders to understand is that this work is about pre-K through 12th grade. It's also about the vertical alignment that's happening in the school district, that it has to do with the core instruction that all students are getting, that it has to do with the supplemental instruction. And then we're also working with districts, obviously, on how to intensify instruction or the most intensive needs of the school building. So those are our 6 critical components that really the work is housed in. This slide may be the most familiar to you in terms of the graphic. You've seen this triangle previously, so our team just wants to point out a couple significant changes that have been made to the triangle as this work has evolved since 2004. One of the things that you hopefully will note is that this visual that we have now better displays the big ideas that the core instruction is the foundation to the school in terms of behavior academics, that we're also looking at core being the resources, being the staff, being the scheduling, that it's not a place for students to go, but it's the resources that we have in place for them. And then the triangle here, I think, better reflects that idea that the supplemental and intensive supports are in addition to what's already happening within that core environment. And just some terminology that is probably used with your teachers that are in your classrooms are that idea of differentiated instruction, which is really brought out here in these 3 successful themes of MTSS. So if we look at these 3 themes of successful MTSS, we've really found that this work can be most successful if it resides in the structures that are in place and familiar language that is in place in the school. So one of the important pieces of this work for our team is to make sure that the work of multi-tiered system of support is connected to the PLCs, or the professional learning communities that exist in the school. So one of the first questions that we may ask school systems or districts is, what do their PLCs look like? How well are they functioning? Who has access to those, and just looking at the effectiveness of those so that we can improve the PLC so that teachers have a place to really dialogue. The other thing that we know about successful multi-tiered systems of support is that it doesn't occur through a lot of presentations, it doesn't occur through a lot of PowerPoints, but that it really occurs through dialogue with staff. And so we want to make sure that we're supporting our district leadership and our schools to have the conversations that are necessary to make the changes that are needed. I'm going to pause here and see if one of our team members can take a look at the chat, and let's see if we can, let's definitely go back to the last slide and take a look at this question that's being asked, and let's respond to that. So thank you for that. Let's go to the triangle slide, Carmen. That's an excellent question, and feel free, Rhonda and Carmen, to jump in. I'll address the question from my perspective and then certainly get my teammates' perspective on this. So the question that, does this mean the triangle is no more? It does not mean the triangle is no more. It means that we're trying to provide a graphic that really better demonstrates what we're trying to accomplish here with total school improvement. And so we had a triangle, of course, that really reflected a focus on that top tier and what to do at that top tier of support. And we are still occasionally using the term tier, and you might hear that in other state work. But what our team is trying to do is trying to allow districts to really make changes where they can impact the most students. And we find that being through strong core instruction. And so we've talked to districts about core, supplemental, and intensive supports. I do believe, Kimberly, that in most of our professional development, we have made the shift to those terms, to core, supplemental, and intensive, while you might still hear some of the words tier. We felt like that if we use the ideas of core, supplemental, and intensive, that it might help us look more closely at what adults are doing and not look so much about the children. It seems like we started to identify our kids as tier 1 kids, tier 2 kids, and tier 3 kids, and we're really wanting to help districts to shift away from that.
And just to add to that, Lynn, I just want to make the point that what the triangle shows you, or at least I hope that it kind of depicts the idea of building upon. And Lynn spoke to this in just before, but just really talking about how your core has to be your solid foundation. And only when that is solid can you really start to think about what you do for those students who aren't responding to that core. And so the triangle certainly is not something that I think is obsolete, but I hope that this graphic really just kind of intensifies the idea that you have to really have a solid core before you can start thinking about those other, the supplemental support or intensive support.
Any other questions? Sure, we will make sure that you get a copy of this. We'll send out the recording of the presentation at the end, and we'll make sure that you have a link of that so that you can use that. So the idea of how we see this really happening in terms of kind of the 3 successful themes, I started talking to you about linking the work with the PLCs. We started thinking about how we want to really engage staff through dialogue versus just many PowerPoint presentations. While we definitely are focused on professional development, we're hoping that districts are looking at professional development in a more holistic way through having conversations, assessing what teachers need, and then responding to that. And then the third thing that hopefully rings true for so many of our schools, and looking at the idea of maybe growth mindset, or just looking at that kind of philosophy, that we really persevere in the face of setbacks. We know that building a multi-tiered system of support is definitely a shift from maybe looking at that top tier of the triangle to looking at core. And so that takes some really brave conversations. And also when we recognize that maybe our core instruction is not meeting the needs of most of our students, then that definitely does allow an opportunity to problem solve on how to support them. And so that takes that grit and perseverance, and it really takes strong teaming structures. It really takes a lot of trust in the school environment. So in looking at this next slide, just to summarize the work of multi-tiered system of support, and I think this idea really helps also with some of the fear that could happen with introducing the idea of whole school improvement, is that our real goal is that we have teachers doing fewer things better. And so instead of having so many different interventions or so many different core practices taking place, that we're allowing districts to put in some structures, some conversations to really define what they want to use that's effective, and then to provide support to teachers to do that. This slide really helps us to share with you all who is supported, and we're going to be talking about how that's done. And so when we're thinking about who is supported, we really want to get up there to that top right corner of this slide. We really want to get to our students, right? Like, that's the idea that the outcomes for school improvement are about strong outcomes for our students. And when we go back down to the bottom of this and how we support this, we see our state team, our state IABS team, really looking to build systems and structures that can support the regional teams. And so much of our professional development and much of our support is regionally based for our districts and charter schools. We are working very strategically at helping districts and charters to build strong teaming structures to make sure that there's representation on their teams of people with skill sets that would help to improve the academic environment, the social, emotional environment, the behavioral environment, people that are very skilled in looking at data. So we've talked with our districts about not so much maybe having a title on the team, but really having people that have the skill sets to allow for school improvement. And so what we have happening within our professional development model is that we're really geared at coaching these district teams to support the school leadership team. And that's what you see on this slide. So from our perspective, the consultants that are working with these district leadership teams from a state level, much of our work is about systems coaching. And so we're utilizing and introducing these district teams to the resources and the things that you see listed on the slide, but we're really coaching them to support their school leadership team. I'm going to stop and just focus for a few seconds on the list of things that we have here, because the list of things that we have in the bottom right of this slide may be some of the ways that we can intersect with you all, our stakeholders, to determine how we can really support what's taken place with our pre-service teachers. So these are the things that we're supporting districts on. We are helping them to develop communication plans, providing them with regular communication, providing them with communication that they can offer to various stakeholders on their team. We have resources and tools, and those resources and tools are housed through an online platform through our course, but they're also housed here in our live binder, and you can see the address there. We can put that in the chat window as well. That has gone out in some of our previous communication. So our resources and the tools are one of the things that we're utilizing to support district teams. In addition to the regional networking, which is how our professional development looks. Most of our professional development is around maybe an MTSS coordinator from a district or from a charter school coming and meeting with other MTSS coordinators, and we're providing professional development for them. And then lastly, just facilitated support. So based on the need, we might go back and start with building readiness, or if we have districts that are moving along in the 3 modules that we've created, then we might go in and do some facilitated support around looking at your intervention systems for secondary literacy and something very specific. So this should help to understand kind of our district leadership team structures, kind of obviously the idea that keeping the team small enough so that it functions well, and the school leadership's team role in examining data and supporting teachers. So what we want to show you here on this slide is going back to that very bottom part of that state team structure and how our structures are working to support districts. So on the slide here, what you see, the names that are in blue connected around the North Carolina map, those are our regional consultants. So a couple of us are on the call today. So we've got Rhonda and Carmen down here supporting cohort 5, and then myself over here, Lynn Bailey, supporting the Western region. And so our map of support looks like this. I'm sure the regional support structures are familiar to you, but so we have the 8 consultants supporting our traditional districts. If I can direct your attention down to the bottom right, just so we can stay on that idea, we have Carmen Mills, who's on the call, who supports the Sandhills and Southwest, primarily for our charter schools. And then on that team as well, we have Rhonda Harrell, who's also on the call, who's supporting 3 other regions with the charter schools. And then Nancy Kiefer, who is not on the call today, but also is working with this IHE work group and also supports the charter schools. So those are our kind of our regional support system. I want to point out some other folks on our team. You had an opportunity to hear the welcome from Dr. Amy Jablonski, our director. And then our leadership structure, if you can look over on the left-hand side of the slide, we have 3 leads under practices, systems, and data, or research and evaluation. And that's Amanda Bird, Angel Goodwine Batts, and Dr. Matt Hoskins. So those those leads help us to kind of keep the big ideas of the systems, the practices, and the data. And then we have a couple other team members that I just want to point them out to you so that you're aware in case you've heard these names or if you've got specific questions. Angie Cloninger leads the professional development. Susan Laney leads the work around research and eval, some of our systems, our tools and resources that we're putting into place. And then Carmen Mills, who is on the call, she leads our technical assistance and coaching work. So those are the structures, and I think if you wanted to connect obviously with one of the regional consultants, or if you wanted to connect with myself or Carmen or Rhonda on the call in terms of IHE work, we welcome those contacts. So as we come to the close of the presentation, we've provided a lot of questions to you and a lot of information, given you a lot to think about. And obviously we reached out to you because we definitely recognize that you have much to offer our pre-service teachers, and we have much to learn from you all in our university systems and private colleges. And so we have a couple questions that we want to ask you. We want to know what we can do to partner and collaborate with you. We're going to open up the call since we have a small group, and feel free to unmute, or we will unmute you and allow you all to answer a couple questions. So while we have the main question on the slide, I'm going to dig a little deeper. And so I asked you, what can we do to partner? What do we need to know about your structures within your teacher ed programs? Feel free to either chat your response, type it in the chat window, or feel free to, like I said, just unmute and share out loud, ask questions about the presentation, or give us some ideas about how we can partner with you.
Hi.
Hi there, is this Kimberly?
It is. I see I was typing my response before I decided I was just going to go ahead and unmute. But my first thought would have been professional development for IHE faculty, much like the PD that was given to the, I guess, the districts.
Yes.
Just so that, we could be on the same page and know exactly, what's going on in terms of MTSS. But again, after reviewing the live binder, you all have done an amazing job there. I just went ahead and opened it up and started looking through. I feel like a lot of self-study can occur here, but it would be great to, of course, have a contact to reach out to whenever we have questions in reference to the content.
That's great. And so we can, you certainly can use the map there, and we can follow up just to be sure that you're not having to search. We can follow up with the recording and then with our specific contact information, Kimberly. I think that would be most helpful to us, is that we can obviously give you all access to the resources, and we really appreciate that you've already taken time to look at the live binder. That speaks volumes to us about your interest, and we certainly look forward to that continued collaboration. But we really want to see how get your ideas about how we could actually provide that PD to IHE faculty. I think just some continued conversations about that would be great.
Yes, that would be great. And then just sitting down, with an MTSS expert, as you all are, and just asking, how can we meaningfully embed this into courses so that we are, introducing it, reinforcing it, and then making sure that, it's mastered in terms of them knowing how to implement the 3-tiered instruction.
Right.
Interventions. So just taking a look at, I guess, at our course of study and just thinking, okay, this probably would be a good place to introduce it. We have like an intro to teaching course. So this would be a good place to introduce it. This would be a good place to reinforce it. This just so that we aren't just, trying to put it in.
Sure.
Where we think it should go.
Right. So I definitely think that having a platform or a way to maybe share what's happening in some other teacher ed programs. I have one example, Kimberly, that I'll share just quickly with this group. So we had Mars Hill University out in the West. They had done kind of the same thing as you and had accessed the live binder. And then they shared with our team some presentations that their pre-service teachers had created using the resources in the live binder. And so they were not only sharing that with their students, but using the content in there for them to create some presentations and for students in their classes to learn. Okay. And I'm happy to reach out to them to, to connect you all or to share, the Google slides that, their students did to, to kind of deepen their learning and their knowledge of the topic.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, those are.
Well, good afternoon. This is Lucy. How's everyone doing?
Hey, Lucy. Thanks for being here.
I'm good. I was my chair is so eloquently asking all the questions that I wanted to ask. I do that foundations class, and that was my immediate thought. When do we start embedding or integrating that, and at what point? So that was going to be my question about the partnering and collaborating with us. When could we have a little sit down, or when could we talk about doing that?
Lynn, if I share a couple of opportunities that I've had as well. Hello, Lucy.
Hey. Okay.
I have actually shared information with several colleagues within the universities, and they have done it with their graduate level, as well as intro.
Okay.
So I think at any point in time, you could use any of that information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I looked in the binder too. Thank you.
And tailor it to the audience.
Okay. Thank you.
Rhonda, thank you for sharing that. So in terms of PD for IHE faculty, Kimberly or Lucy, give me an idea kind of what you could envision, maybe both like how that could be clustered or kind of what the nuggets are that you would want them to walk away with.
That is a loaded question.
I was going to say the same thing.
I just, to be completely honest, I think we should begin from, just take it as if this is a person who has never heard anything in reference to MTSS at all. And walk it from there, just because there really is no, you're not sure where people are in terms of how long they've been out of the classroom and what have you. So, and with it being RTI previously, and I heard all the terms that you said, responsiveness to intervention, response to instruction, all of those different things, and all of that was just coming back to me, yes. So I just think, as you've done with the history, also kind of taking it back that way, with just thinking of it as a novice, a complete person who has no understanding of MTSS.
Yes.
Completely. And I think that would just be great PD. Now, in terms of clustering it, that's a very good question. I know that we are private, and so we're a part of the North Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities, and sometimes we all get together and do different trainings and things together. We'll come together at one of the universities. Meredith, Peace, Shaw, we'll come together because we're close, in range, and whenever we are doing certain trainings that we all want to be a part of, one of the division head or chairs will come together and we'll talk about how we can get that same training in if we all want it. So I'm not sure what other places do, but since we are in close proximity, we do that.
So I think that is something that as we move forward with our collaboration, that those are conversations that we can continue to have. I appreciate you tackling that question during a live call.
I know.
But yes, but those are definitely things that, we want, first of all, just putting it out there and doing a webinar, like we want it to be accessible. And it's difficult, right, to get large numbers of people together. And so just trying to find the time and the space and the platform to do that, and problem solving with you all on best practices for getting to you would be fantastic.
I really like the idea of the collaborating in structures that you're already utilizing. Kimberly, thank you for also mentioning that regional support through the private colleges that you also participate in, because that's the way that we try to collaborate, in that same way, in that regional format where we kind of are talking to a lot of people who are in the same position, and so or as MTSS coordinators. And so that would be fantastic to also share information around what that collaboration for your region looks like as well for the IHEs. Thank you.
So we can certainly, we're going to be sending a survey, and I noticed that we had a couple others. I think we had somebody from Pfeiffer on for a little bit today. So we will definitely follow up with the survey, with the recording of the presentation, and that will allow you all to give us some specific feedback on those questions and following up on how we can really support you. And if there's anything else that you'd want us to know in terms of teacher preparation programs, as we're thinking about how to best serve the field and how to collaborate together, we certainly are looking forward to opportunities to continue those conversations.
All right, thank you.
Sure thing. So I don't know if my team members have anything else, if Lucy or Melvin, who are on the call, have anything else that they want to ask or add. We certainly can stay on and answer questions as long as you all have those.
No, not at this time. Thank you so much. Very, very good presentation.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you for joining us.
We really appreciate you joining the conversation, and it was great to hear from you as well.
Thank you.
It sure was. And if you guys feel free to read, if you have some other ideas, or if you just want to have some conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again, and we'll end this for now, and but we will just continue to work on collaborating, and your questions were incredibly valuable. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here.